Welcome. Welcome. Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you all for being here. Anybody on Zoom? Not yet? Okay. Welcome to the Ward 4 and 7 NPA meeting. There are some agendas around, and hopefully everyone had a chance to sign in and grab a name tag, and some tasty pizza and salad from American Flatbread. And feel free to get seconds, take some home. Looks like there'll be some leftovers, so. My name's Sarah. Part of the steering committee. I live in Ward 7. I also wanted to, before we have a chance for everyone to do a little introduction, that's how we've been starting our meetings the last several months, give a chance for everybody to share their name and their pronouns and their ward, so that we can meet our neighbors this way and everyone has a chance to talk at the meeting. I do want to make let you know about one update to the agenda. Unfortunately, the steering committee waited a little too long to reach out to Emma, and our timing was a little off. So unfortunately, she won't be joining us tonight. That being said, we'll do our best to reach out again, and hopefully she'll be able to be here in June to give us some updates. I know everyone's pretty excited to chat with her and hear what's going on. We will have some other updates from the Statehouse later in the evening, but just wanted to let you all know to start off since that was on the agenda. And without further ado, we'll get into it. And like I said, we're starting our meetings by introducing ourselves. So I will hand it off to Gail, if that's all right. Just say I just read your name tag, so that's why we got them, right? And we also have another microphone. So anyone who's, we will have open forum right after that. So save your announcements until we get around the room.
Gail, I'm she, her, I'm in Ward 4.
Mark Montalban of Ward 4, and I'm the owner of Green Acres Homestead doing urban permaculture here in the new North End.
Speak directly into the microphone.
Okay, Mark Montalban, proprietor of Green Acres Homestead. I live over Green Acres Drive in Ward 4.
My name's Mark. I go by he and him, and I'm in Ward 7.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm in Ward 7, and I go by she, her.
This is Hunt and Mary Jane McMahon. This is Ed.
Sean, Ward 4.
Hi, I'm Marisa, Ward 7.
Bob Wright, Ward 7. Pat Roach, Ward 4.
Carol, Ward 4.
Sylvia Knight, she, her, Ward 7.
Martha Malthus, she, her, Ward 7.
Evan Litwin, he, him, and I'm in Ward 7 as well.
Sal Millichamp, I'm in Ward 7, she, them.
I'm Annie Lawson, I'm in Ward 4.
I'm Hank Prensky. I'm a member of the steering committee in Ward 4.
I have 2 microphones now. Caitlin, I'm part of the steering committee, and we are Ward 4. Thank you. Took me a moment.
Either Ivy, Ward 7, he, him, they, them, pronouns.
Susan, Ward 4, she, her.
Nancy, Ward 7, she, her.
Ellie, she, her, Ward 4.
Hi, my name is Lee Morgan. My pronouns are they, them. I live in Ward 7, and I am your Parks Commissioner.
Hello, Andrew Chronickfeld, he, him, Ward 7, and I'm on the steering committee.
Abby Duke, Ward 7.
Monica Ivanchich, Ward 7.
Carly Bennett, she, her, Ward 7. This is Ollie. He's not here.
Sequoia, Ward 4.
Hi, my name is Gordon Dragoon, Ward 4, he, him.
Did we get everybody? All right, I think there's one person on Zoom. Just wanted to invite you to unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Deb Boughton here, Ward 7. I'm busy trying to make birds out of icing.
Hang on there, Deb, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay? No?
Yeah, can you go ahead? Try again?
I'm sorry. Deb Boughton, Ward 7. Can't be there in person because I'm making birds out of icing for cupcakes right now for a deadline.
What time do they get delivered?
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining on
Little
Zoom.
success. That's why I'm not there. So sorry I
Excellent.
can't join you.
We need more icing birds. I think I speak for all of us. Do you have a question, Hank?
Yeah, I noticed that Andrew introduced, Lee introduced it as a park commissioner. Other folks who have special roles within our Ward 4 and 7 community, just say what your roles are, so if people need you, they'll find you.
City councilor.
Yeah, state representative.
You guys have a mic on that table, right? Oh, it's over here. Sorry. We're getting our steps in, but we have one more mic usual. Thank you, folks who are in those positions, for sharing that and being here tonight. And thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. The next item on our agenda is actually the public forum. So this is a time to make any announcement of upcoming events or any other issues or topics that you want to bring up to folks in the neighborhood. So feel free to just raise your hand, and Caitlin and I will bring you a mic so you can share. All right, Andrew, grab you a mic. There you go.
Yeah, hi. I brought this up a few months ago, but I'm interested in putting a subcommittee together and about having block parties this summer. So I don't know what I have to do to get that going tonight, but thanks.
Awesome.
I just want to ask everyone, so in previous times I've been here, I have said that I am unable to join the Facebook forums. And I'm just wondering if, I haven't planned anything yet, but I'm wondering if anyone is curious or interested in like an alternative platform for the New North End's like social media, like a self-hosted Mastodon instance, for example, that would be locally run here. Facebook, I wouldn't collect any of your data. Facebook doesn't collect any of your data. I'm just wondering if that's something any of you are interested in. I have no plans for it yet, but if you have the idea, let me know.
That sounds cool. So that's another platform other than Facebook to connect on.
You repeat the platform name?
There are a few I'm considering, but I'll hold on a second. The platform I'm thinking of, I'm actually thinking of self-hosting a Mastodon instance for the Burlington New North End that would connect with this NPA and try to make a local social media for all of us here. It wouldn't connect to any other instances, or any other networks, but it would just be its own thing. But I think it'd be good to have like a local thing for us to like get to know each other better and stuff like that. And yeah. I'm sorry for being too confusing, but feel free to chat with me later if you want to learn more about what I'm thinking of.
Awesome.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks. I just wanted to let everybody know that, the week, what?
Would you mind just saying your name?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Abby Duke, she, her, Ward 7, state rep. Okay, so the weekly mayor coffee hours on Wednesday that Murrow did for however many years, there's a group of folks who are continuing that. And I think the idea is there will be different guests each week. So anybody, anybody's welcome, just like always at the Bagel, 8 o'clock on Wednesdays. Next week, Becca Ballant is going to be there, 8:30 on Wednesday. And the following week, it's going to be Thursday, and Emma Mulvaney-Stanek, the mayor, will be there. And she has committed as a second hand, but she's going to make her schedule work to be there at least once a month. And then I think the idea is there will be different folks there. And so, and like always, it's an open forum for community issues. Everybody there gets to share with, what's on their mind.
That sounds exciting. Oh, and it's at the Bagel. So Wednesdays at the Bagel, 8 a.m.
It's gonna be Thursday, June 6th. Because Emma, the Jackson, the mayor, is about to get possible. Yes, as far as I know.
June 6th.
So 8 a.m. next Wednesday with Becca Ballant, and the following Thursday at 8 a.m. with the mayor.
I'm not speaking as representative of the Vermont Beekeepers Association, but some of you may know about it. Since 1886, the Vermont Beekeepers Association was set up to support pollinators, safe farming practices. As time goes by, it made a big difference. People who were around long enough in Vermont may remember, or their grandparents may told them that as late as the late 1970s, you can take your fuel oil, dump it in the sewer, or dump it into the streams. Yeah.
If you don't mind speaking up into the microphone.
Okay.
People can't hear you back there.
So the importance of Vermont Beekeepers Association is more just than those of us who are beekeepers. Do have an amazing group of beekeepers here in the New North End. But you may have known that we lobbied very strongly to ban one of the worst neurotoxins that are actually banned in 64 countries around the world, the cannabinoids, or neurotoxins is often called. The legislature, which I think everyone literally in Burlington, I passed overwhelmingly to support phasing that out. Yesterday, in total irony, or maybe it wasn't irony, yesterday was World Bee Day, acknowledging bees and pollinators. Governor Scott vetoed this bit of legislature and used information that was not valid, but brought in by chemical companies, pharmaceutical chemical companies with neurotoxins. It is horrible. I don't think you realize the impact on what it has. Now, I know in my area, not to toot my horn, I got about 25 of my neighbors to stop buying or using stuff of that insecticide seeds by offering them honey. And the whole premise is the less likely my bees are poisoned, the more honey I can give you. And that's the important factor. Now, the studies that have come out of Europe and many other places in Canada, which Quebec, our big competitor in our culture, has banned us since 2019, is showing multigenetic, tetragenetic effects. Very bluntly, it affects people's DNA. So the request is to maybe contact our governor and kind of bring a little bit of sunshine and honey to his life. The whole idea is there's no Vermont term. You win people over not with vinegar, but with honey. Even though right now I have a lot of words of vinegar I can share with our governor. So it's a suggestion. That bill is 706. So it's a reminder, and maybe he can kind of take some atonement. It's already been, he vetoed. It's positive it's going to pass, but it's important that every legislator is present to override the veto with this. Because I know Burlington has done a lot with pesticides and chemicals, and this is one step further, and will eventually phase out the use of these neurotoxins by 2029. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Any other updates right now? If not, I also wanted to pop back to Andrew's proposal for creating a subcommittee for a summer event. If I got that right, Andrew. Just wanted to see if there was other interest in being part of that committee with maybe just a hand raised from anybody. Okay, Ellie, Sequoia, Martha, we got a couple. Got a couple folks. That's awesome. I don't know if we want to make an official proposal for a subcommittee. Okay. Here, I'll hand you a microphone.
Yeah, I'd like to make an official proposal to form a subcommittee on summer events / block parties for this summer 2024. Let's say do I have a second?
Seconded.
It's passed, right? Oh, can we vote? All in favor, say aye. All right, sounds like it passed, right? Opposes? Opposers? All right, thanks.
Oh, did you have a comment, Ally? No. Okay. Oh, I thought I heard someone.
Just on this topic, there's a member of Burlington named Jason Van Dries that might be worth getting in touch with. He's currently trying an effort to make it easier to close down streets temporarily. As of right now, it's a whole convoluted process where you need 2/3 to 3/4 of neighbors to sign up, and then you get to do it once. He's trying to make it so if 2/3 or 3/4 of neighbors agree, it can be a lot easier to spin up at any given time in the future, which might feed into what you're talking about there. So he might be worth getting in touch with. Also, if anyone hears that coming through, it sounds like a good idea. So
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Any other updates during this public forum? Here we go.
I have one update. In the Village Green, Saratoga. Oh, I'm Amy, she, her pronouns, living on Village Green. You're welcome. Thanks for asking or reminding me. We have an annual garage sale. It's gonna be June 1st. It's like 9 to 3. It's a lot of fun. That's my announcement.
Awesome.
Buy and ticket.
Get there close to 3 and maybe you'll be taking some stuff. Awesome. Anything else anybody wanted to share while we're all here? I know Front Porch Forum is always a good resource, but you've got attentive ears. All right, one more thing. I'll bring you the mic.
I am on the Burlington Walk and Bike Council. This June 5th on a Wednesday, we're going to be having a meeting. We have the first Wednesday of every month. There's a meeting. This month, we are going to be talking about trying to reduce the speed limit in the downtown core of Burlington to 20 miles an hour. Currently, the limit is 25, and we're for most of it, and we're trying to extend it. There's some complications on why we can't expand that outside of the downtown core, limited to the state, basically. So that's going to be an interesting topic. We're also going to be covering DPW is interested in trying to make it easier to do demonstration projects, which would be something like putting bollards up on a street so that way it is open to only local traffic and walking and biking and something like that. So if folks are interested in either of those topics, feel free to come by. This is at DPW on June 5th, the Wednesday, but it is also available as like a Zoom meeting. That would be on Pine and 645 Pine. Thank you.
Well, thanks for everyone's updates. One more back here.
Thank you. Evan Litwin, he, him, Ward 7. I just thought I'd also mention that the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office and the committee are looking for volunteers for the Juneteenth festival that will be happening for our next NPA. And so there is a link at, I think it's btvreib.com, but you can also Google REIB or Google Juneteenth in Burlington, and mark your calendars. There's, I think, 12 hours of events over the course of the day. And I think it's June 15th this year. The official holiday is the 19th, but I just wanted to double check the date. It looks like it is the 15th. So if you're interested in volunteering on the 14th or 15th, they have a Google form you can fill out. And I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Evan. Any other updates or announcements? All right, hearing none for now, we will move on in our agenda. If possible, not sure if, let's see. Not sure if Emily or anyone from the Water Resources Division is here. Awesome. Hey there. Sorry, I'll Martin Lee. Okay, Martin, thanks for being here. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Anything?
Hi, Martin Lee from the Water Resources Department. Thanks for having me tonight. Tonight, I'm here to talk about the water service line inventory project. And a big part of it is I'd really like to make sure we're drumming up the support to get people involved in the process, because we're looking to residents to really help out with the inventory on this project. So I just have a brief PowerPoint presentation to go through the background of the project and how you can get involved. Thanks. So first, a little bit about the history of how we got here. This slide's about the EPA lead and copper rule. So back in the 80s, awareness about lead in our drinking water was coming to the surface and was of interest to our country. And at that time, the Safe Drinking Water Act was amended in 1986. It was amended to ban lead in pipes, but it did not retroactively require removing lead pipes at that time. And then in the 1990s, 1991, the EPA lead and copper rule established maximum contaminant levels for lead and copper. Next slide, please. So in Burlington around that same time, we reacted, and we were kind of, I would say, with the curve or a little ahead of the curve, reacting to concerns about drinking water. So in 1982, Burlington started conducting sampling for lead and other contaminants. 6 sites were found to have elevated lead in Burlington. Burlington's water is naturally corrosive. So at that time, in 1984, we started treating the water with sodium hydroxide to neutralize the water. In 1990, we moved on to using zinc orthophosphate, which is still what we use, and it's it's the common nationwide corrosion inhibitor that's used in drinking water systems. And since using that treatment, Burlington has been in compliance with the lead and copper rule levels. Next slide, please. So now, fast forward to today or a couple years ago, and the EPA is now taking additional steps to help protect the country's drinking water systems. And that's what we're here to do. It's the amendment to the lead and copper rule includes all state and local water utilities to develop it and submit inventories for their lines. We need to identify lead service lines to be replaced, as well as galvanized lines needing to be replaced by October 16th. The Burlington annual reports list all kinds of pipes. So we list the kinds of pipes as galvanized, cast iron, and lead for a short window of time from 1929 to 1937. After 1937, lead was no longer listed as a potential pipe. With that being said, we don't have any records of lead pipes in our system. We haven't come across any. Even so, we really want to do a good job and a thorough inventory at our job right now to make sure we're checking on it. Next slide, please. So what we're doing, and this is kind of a little background on the statistics or numbers related to this project, is we need to work with approximately 11,000 water service lines that are in our community. And of those, we have around 7,200 lines that have been reviewed and the materials have been identified. We have a little over 2,000 unknown lines that we still need to identify. And we have around 1,700 unreviewed service lines. So part of that process that is underway involves us going through our paper records. It involves us sending out a survey. We actually sent mailers to everyone in all of Burlington to complete the survey for their water service line, and we encourage you to do so if you haven't. There's actually an incentive. I'd like to mention you get in the running for, I believe it's two $50 gift cards per month for folks that enter on a monthly basis. So that's an important part of it. And then we're also going to be determining when we need to go door to door. So we're going to probably be kind of triaging that to the ones where we really need to, and using our resources accordingly, because we probably can't go to every single house door to door. Next slide, please. Here's a brief overview of the timeline of our project. We started back in November 2023, alerting the public to this project and letting everyone know that we're going to be doing it. Since November and through now, we've been contacting properties and updating our records. From May to June, approximately, we're really going to be going through the records and determining what is missing or non-compliant, so that we can then develop a list where for the rest of this project, we're making sure that we do the appropriate direct outreach and additional field work we may need to do. That leads us to October of this year, when our inventory is due. It's due October 16th. We need to get it to the state, and then we're planning on following up in November. Our goal is to have a map so that we can share with the public the results of our work. And here, this is just some of the outreach we're doing. I'll go over this quickly. We have, it's gone out with our bill on the ONTAP newsletter. We've mailed out postcards to everyone. We do social media. Looks like a survey form and frequently asked questions are available. I actually have two handouts here today that I'll leave on the table, so you guys can pick them up. The two handouts include information about the project and then also information about how to complete the survey. We're also partnering with other programs in the city. We're partnering with large community organizations and landlords like UVM. They're going to help us get into all their basements and look at their water lines. And our customer care team is pretty up to speed on this project, so they can be contacted and the project can be discussed with them. So we highlighted wards 4 and 7 here, the dark blue rows. The numbers are, we definitely have a good turnout so far. We have close to 1,000 people citywide. We definitely want to keep getting that number up. Most of the pipes, the first column are copper. We do have a fair amount of galvanized pipes in our system. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be replaced under this program, even though galvanized pipes, we're not a fan because they are old and brittle and break. But that's why I do want to highlight that there's a fair amount of those. We have some plastic pipes, nothing listed as ductile iron, and then the unknown column, that's definitely the column where we would be following up with folks to get into their property, hopefully to look at their pipe. So I have a few slides here just to show you some good photos. This is what we want for the inventory. We want, something that's well lit, and we have a good angle so we can see the pipe. And the pipe that we're concerned about is in this image, it's on the right-hand side of the meter. So we would call that the street side of the meter. That's what we care the inventory. Next slide, please. This is a rough one. We can't really see it, not very good light and a bad angle. Next slide. And here's a pretty decent one, some good lighting, and we can get a good view of that one. So, yeah, so I think that covers it. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you.
So I get the card and I thought it was very. Hi, I'm Mary Jane from Ward 7. I got the postcard and did what it said. I thought it was very clear. But I'm wondering, for the people that didn't respond, do you send them another postcard? How do you follow up with those folks, or do you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're coming to the NPA. We're doing many different. We're trying to do like all the different types of outreach. In terms of another mailer, I can check with our team whether that's in the plans or not. I think we're definitely going to prioritize. There might be a neighborhood where it's construction was done in the 90s, and then we're not going to be super concerned about that neighborhood. But if there's a neighborhood in an particularly old part of town, then I think we would focus on them. So yeah, that's a good question though, and I don't know at this time if we're going to mail out to them. That would be probably a fair amount of work and cost to do.
I have the concerning situations, in a situation where not the first language of some of these that have been purchased within the last 10 or 15 years. What is the language access? Like, in other words, you send out postcards to send out information. Is it a situation where someone with English, there's going to be an understanding, or you're reaching out to AL or other folks, to new Americans? There is some places in the city where the pipes are very questionable, and I don't want to go into details. Formally, no. Well, it is formally no. And I know there's a deadline, but I would consider, with funds or support, I know you have a deadline to do things. If you have sort of what we call like a 95% compliance, do not presume the other 5% follows it. And I would request that, the city, goes ahead and really covers every single situation. Because hypothetically, there are some properties, housing or renting, where there are issues with those pipes. So I just asked if we could put together a plan, even if it's a couple years down the road, to make sure that every single household is established and marked off as clear or not clear.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so that, two noted points. The postcard that went around to folks, I am almost positive had a very thorough, spectrum on the, language. So people had accessibility with, being able to reach out if they, had questions or needed interpretation. And then I noted for the, even if we don't get to all the lines now, I think part of this project does require us to keep track. And if we have any unknowns, we're not allowed to just say, oh, we're throw our hands up and say we're done. I think we are required to continue pursuing and really getting to the bottom of this. It's just by the October deadline, there may still be some of those stragglers.
A couple of questions. One, I think, what he was saying, I don't know, can people? I'm trying, if you can hear, okay. I think those are some great questions, and given, historically, is there a specific cutoff date you can just use and then focus on the dwellings that would be older, that you can actively contact them as opposed to contacting, wasting all the time contacting people that live in newer buildings that probably don't have lead pipes?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm gonna answer that by saying that we're staffing up with some interns for the summer that we're gonna be strategizing with them. We have me, a couple other folks that are full-time. We don't, it's not our full-time job, but we're getting people that are gonna be full-time in the summer, and they're gonna be strategizing about, I think exactly what you're saying is we need to, get as many as we can, but then prioritize.
Right. And I do admit I got the postcard. I felt like it was a while back, and it might have also been right around the election, but I could be wrong. So it's kind of when I was getting a lot of postcards in the mail. So I think, trying to get more attention is good, and especially contacting landlords. And again, any people who own and rent out the older buildings, because they also might be less likely to even pay attention to the postcard. And you said you had flyers, but I don't know
Yeah.
where they are.
I have them right here.
Oh, you haven't passed them out. Okay.
And I could pass them around, or I can just put them on the, whatever's preferred. Thank you.
Yeah, just have the other side, so. Yeah.
I think Ellie might have. Ellie, did you still have a question? I saw your hand up earlier.
Oh, yeah. Question is a personal anecdote. Is this problem related to? Okay, first off, I just want to say that I'm not sure if the tap water in Burlington is drinkable, because the tap water in our house at least seems like it's chlorinated. I have no idea whether or not that is related to this issue with the pipes, but if it is, let me know. I'll try and get some pictures in as soon as possible.
Did you had a specific concern about your pipe? Or is it?
Coordination. If there was a correlation between the pipes and.
Possible chlorination in the water. It tastes like it's chlorinated. I wonder if that's correlated at all with the pipes.
Yeah, the drinking water is treated with the zinc orthophosphate, which helps with corrosion inhibitor throughout our system. We also use fluoride, and chlorine.
All right.
So those are the chlorine is what keeps our drinking water safe from viruses, and
All
we
right.
need to have that residual, and can sometimes be tasted, and
Yeah.
smelled in our system. Yep.
All right.
Thanks for that. Any other questions for Martin? Oh, Sylvia?
I'm still not hearing the name of the chemical that you use besides the fluorine and the chlorine, fluoride and chlorine. What is it? The one that's against,
The zinc orthophosphate.
a little louder, please.
Zinc orthophosphate.
Thank you.
One more question?
Just a nitpicky thing, as someone who does some design work, I'm looking at your flyer. And if anybody looks at it very, very quickly, this is the full page. They're not going to pay attention to the little light blue box lines, and they're just going to see galvanized lines and lead lines are both a dull silver gray color, and then look at the photo that's immediately above it and see copper pipes and think, oh my God, I have these pipes in my house. So you might want to make the distinction more, put actual boxes instead of just the little like right angles, because it's not very user friendly.
Okay. No, thank you for that comment, design comment.
Any other questions for Martin or comments? All right, well, thank you for your presentation. It sounds like also talk to your neighbors about this. If they got the flyer, make sure that they're filling their survey out, and hoping to get all the information that we can. That being said, we'll move on to our updates. Abby Duke, do you want to start us off? I don't see Robert Hooper here tonight yet, perhaps. But yeah, he said that he would. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say Charlie can give us a little.
Okay, so we're still struggling with the sound system. So how can we maximize our sound? Turn off the fan. Okay. Okay, so how about the location of this? Should this be way up here so that those people can hear, or should this be back here? It's up. So where should it be?
You're fine, the fan fixed it.
Oh, okay. So where do you want this thing? Is that where you want it, right there? Okay. And in the future, we'll have 4 of these. And the other thing is, what all the other wards do and what every other meeting on the planet does is they have runners. So what you have is you have 2 designated people. So Sarah should not be running all over the room. Okay, she should be staying right here. You should have a person with a microphone who basically, when somebody wants to speak, that person goes to them. Okay, and the
Somehow
same
they're
thing
both
over
up here right now, so I don't know how.
So you need a couple of runners for next month. So, because it just makes everything better. And just imagine like she's in a wheelchair and she can't move. So you need to take care of your facilitator. Does anyone else have any other suggestions for how to improve the sound in the room?
We got one over here. I'll pass you the mic with my steps.
Thank you. With this type of microphone, it's pressure sensitive. You know what I mean when I'm talking about pressure? So when you speak in a microphone like this, you hear any pressure sounds? Can you hear the microphone? Can you hear it now? All right. In other words, what you want to do, can you hear it now? You want to keep your voice projection away from directly pushing the pressure that's coming out of your mouth. When you start going pee, or something like that, and you're too close, it reverberates. So get it away from the front of your face, put it to the side, as close as you can. And when you turn to speak, keep it with you. Don't turn to speak and go And then, because it doesn't come from there over to here. So, mic position awareness. Now, this isn't the best kind of mic for that. There are mics that you can get that, will pick up the vibrations plenty, as long as it's within the range of vibration, and you got to keep it away from the pressure.
Yeah, unfortunately, like we have these wireless mics right here. See, normally at all my other NPA meetings, we take this kind of a microphone. And all you gotta be is this close.
Maybe put a couple of those on the table.
See that? Well, that's what I do so this is a large room. And so the decision was made to use wireless mics. And so instead of me putting all of them all over the room like that, because see, my microphones do not amplify. All they do is they record it for the online people and for the recording. Okay, so this is the fact you've got wireless, that's a really good idea. And the problem is sometimes they run out of energy and sometimes people don't use them to their maximum efficiency. But as long as you got a couple of runners in the room, it works out really well. So yes, we just have to train everybody to speak close to the center of the microphone. So Sarah.
Yes, perfect. And I think, I don't know, your example, I think that the reverberation maybe sounds good for some people. So holding it like right in front of your face instead of down here like this. Yeah. It's a big difference. So kind of straight ahead. And so, yeah, directionally right in front. And so another chance to practice when we all introduce ourselves, we'll practice that and be back next month. And that's when we do it. Did you have something to add, MJ? No. Okay. Thanks for that note, Charlie. Yeah, we can put that one over there and this one over here. And we'll spread them all out. All right. Yeah, I would love to invite you up, Abby. Thanks so much for being here.
All right, well, hopefully Bob will walk in as well, because he's got his Bob Hooper, so to bring his perspective. So after that microphone, I don't know that I'm doing it right, that lesson, is this working? And I'm getting some hand signals, like this and louder, down and louder, straight and louder, like that, like that. Yeah. Nice, yes, okay. So Abby Duke again. So I was appointed to the seat that Emma held in the legislature it was basically 2 weeks ago. So I was there for the final week of the legislative session. So I'm going to share some observations. I can give you some updates, but please be patient with me. I also have some written materials. I can look some things up or questions I can write down and get back to you. But I was sworn in on a Monday morning, and then the legislature adjourned at 2 a.m. on Friday night, Saturday morning. So it was kind of a wild week. And really, it was an incredible experience to be sort of dropped in this final wild week. Some observations I have is there were a lot of incredible people. The staff at the legislature are really amazing. In terms of how they run the show and how they take care of the legislators, really, really impressive. Many of the legislators are, and I would say the majority of the legislators are smart, engaged people who are really there for the right reasons, and really everyday regular people, ranging from people who are retired and people who are, working 2 jobs in the off season to make it work so that they can be there, because it's not easy to be there. It's not paid very well. It is difficult for people to serve in the legislature without, significant outside resources. So, it was impressive to see that and to see the sacrifices that many of those legislators are making to be there. I also observed, as everybody knows, democracy is messy. And I spent a fair amount of time just kind of trying to figure out what was going on, and had a lot of people being very generous with information. What's going on? And then they would try to explain it to me, and I said, okay, I kind of get it. But there's a lot of going back and forth between the floor and into the committee. I was put on the committee Emma was on, which is the Commerce and Economic Development Committee. So we're going back and forth in the committee and on the floor. The bill that I got to know the best that the committee was working on was a data privacy bill and something called Kids Code, which is like design, sort of, how would you describe it? It's sort of requiring companies to design with safety in mind for kids online. And that was wild. It went back and forth between the House and the Senate. It passed unanimously in the House, including all the Republicans, at about midnight on Friday night. And it was really cool to see that whole process. And the committee was so proud. It's chaired by a Republican, the only committee chaired by a Republican in the House, who clearly had tremendous respect from everybody else on his committee. And he really empowered this young legislator from Bradford named Monique Priestley. I think this bill has been covered in Politico. It's arguably the strongest data privacy bill in the country. And it's really an example of a state trying to step in where the federal government has really abdicated their responsibility, which is there should be federal legislation requiring these companies to follow data privacy. So that was, I would say, the coolest experience of the week was watching that bill kind of go, adapt and change, and there were amendments. But in the end, I think people were happy. We're happy. There's some things I think that could have been stronger, obviously, but people were really happy. Now that is sitting on it officially is being sent to the governor, I think tomorrow, and then he'll have 5 days to either sign it, veto it, or let it sit on his desk for 5 days, and then it becomes law. So there is if data privacy is important to you, there are, and I can send you a link to, there's letters going, or you can call the governor's office and urge him to sign the bill. I think it is, I think it's a really important bill. So, okay, yes. I gotta work. House 21, I'm gonna get it to you. I'm gonna get that to you. I knew it. Oh boy. Okay. Yes, please jump in with questions and then I'll keep talking to you.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So I am wondering, I'm aware that California also has a very strong data privacy law, and many websites actually have a section specifically for Californians, say do not display data. Would this Vermont law do something similar for Vermont?
So I don't know.
All right.
Exactly. I know that this law makes a variety of requirements in terms of, a lot of it is about how companies can use your data. So it's about, and it's biometric data, it's all kinds of data. It's not just, there's also in the Vermont law, which is strong. I don't know that any other state has it, is a right to private action. It is only for data brokers who have at least 100,000 names, 100,000 contacts in Vermont. So it's really, that started out in the House bills 25,000, and then the Senate it ended up, and with, I think, lots of lobbying, that they increased that to 100,000 names. So it will really, so the private right of action means that an individual can sue. And that is getting nationwide notice, because that is much stronger than any other state. And I think as an example, an example of Vermont leading the way. So, okay, so I've got that. Yes, go ahead, Mark.
So one thing, maybe I'll race trucks with maybe soon to be former Governor Scott, but the reason I say that is he again is using this thing, and a lot of us who work, especially those around issues around grooming situations, pedophile behavior, stuff going through underneath the surface. The governor is claiming that this impacts sort of the free market, access, limits legitimate businesses, even though we're pointing out the situation about data hacking that goes into underage, everything else. I mean, it covers a lot well beyond California. The governor is using that. So I would suggest very strongly, because I have that strong opinion. I used to work in social services for most of my life, and I've seen what people have been taken advantage of, whether through earlier medias or now through social media, is contact the governor and tell him in a nice way with sweet honey, not vinegar, why it's important he doesn't veto that, because he's been playing this thing, if you heard in Vermont Digger, his PR people have it out there why he thinks it's an impact legitimate small companies.
And I would say this bill, from what I have heard from other folks in the legislature, this bill really brought a coordinated lobbying effort. So there were Vermont businesses testifying, but they were using talking points they were like, oh, this is very similar to what these large national lobbying firms were using in a similar bill in Kentucky, so this bill brought out the big guns, so to speak, the big lobbying guns. So this is another observation I had during my legislature, which is, and I think everyone knows this, just how accessible our legislature is. And I've been there, and I've been there for different sort of days, and I've BBSR days but to be there for the week, you're like, it's amazing. And you can walk in, there's security, but there's no metal detector, there are security officers there, but you can walk in anytime, you can walk the halls, you can find legislators, you can talk to them, they generally have name tags on. You can go in and observe the House or the Senate, you can go and observe any committee, and every single thing is online, so you can listen to the committees. And the agendas, like when I would go into the committee room, the agenda we used was the agenda that you would use. We literally link to it and everything is posted. It's pretty cool. And so, those are my observations. I would say the next step is waiting to see what else Governor Scott vetoes. I think, we know this, is that I think there has been, well, I will say the other legislators were all very frustrated by this year. And I think there's a feeling that he's not doing a lot of collaboration with them. He's sort of waiting to use veto as his blunt instrument. So there's a lot of frustration about that. Both the Senate and the House have a supermajority. So there's the potential to override any of his vetoes. So far, I know that bill that you talked about, the neonicotinoid, I don't know how to pronounce it, which is super important. I echo Mark said about contacting the governor. That is, and so we're waiting. He has indicated that he will veto the yield bill, which is the one that sets property tax rates for the education fund. That is a huge, complicated bill that I don't understand enough to talk much about it, except that it does increase taxes for the education fund significantly, not as much as they thought a few months ago, but I think on average, it's 13.8%, something like that. I think there's there's definitely understanding that the education funding system is broken, and there's lots of disagreement about how to go about figuring out how to fix it. We've got much more fundamental problems than just what is the right formula. It's like we just have fundamental problems with the way education is funded. But we have to fund our schools, right? And most of these budgets have already been passed. So we have to raise the fund. The legislature has to pass a bill that funds the schools, and the budgets have already been passed. So, but I think there's a lot of work to do for next year and into the future to, I think, really totally revamp the way education funding is done. The budget, what else can yes, Monica. Yeah, this is another thing. It's many of you here are more experts.
Well, I can't say that Monica Ivanchich, Ward 7, that I totally understand the yield bill either, but there is a thing in there that they're going to form a committee, right?
Yeah.
To study.
So the idea is they're going to form a committee. Now, part of the problem is, over the past 10 years, there have been 23 committees. I don't remember what the number is. There's been a lot of committees, right? So the question is, why is this any different? But there's going to be a committee both to, so this is part of the disagreement with the governor, is the governor wants the committee first to revamp the funding system and then figure out what we want from the education system. And then the other argument would be to first create what we want and then figure out how to fund it. So,
Okay.
that's my understanding of the big disagreement. And Governor Scott wants systemic changes to happen right now, which is pretty hard to do that, right?
Yeah, I read an op-ed by Marilyn McLean, who was in education for a long time, and it's like in the Times Argus, but she talks about, how we consolidated districts, and that was supposed to save money. Well, there's no proof that it saved money.
Yeah.
And it actually made people less interested in voting for education. So districts that didn't consolidate in general, voters vote for the budget, while the consolidated districts, it's like they'll vote against the budget.
Yeah, a big problem is that voting for or against the budget doesn't really impact your taxes. So there's a real disconnect. Like we're voting for budgets, but ultimately the legislature sets the tax rate based on what everybody else's budget is. There is not, the set of incentives and disincentives does not line up with action. So it's very complicated. And so I think he'll probably veto that. And so the veto session is the 17th of June, and possibly more than one day, one day or more. And so, we'll see what happens with that. Yes.
In the funding that you guys are just discussing about the budget for education, the majority of it comes from, I'm guessing, property taxes in the
That's right.
state. Well, there's a lot of retirees here who don't have kids in school. And I've heard some grumblings about, why do I have to keep paying for something I'm not using? So is there a possibility of switching the focus from funding away from property taxes primarily to other sources? And there are many different sources, like I can imagine. And so has anybody begun to examine that possibility?
I believe so. I believe so. I mean, I think that's the fact that we rely on property taxes to fund education, I think is a big problem. And I think it is something people have looked at and talked about for years and is very hard. It's a stable funding source, which I think is part of it, but it's a much bigger conversation that I don't fully understand. Like tax policy is, there's a lot. And some of the things that are coming together right now is the COVID money is, the ARPA money is, a bunch of this one-time funding is gone. And we continue to have more and more needs in our schools and more mental health issues and more, the schools have become a place where, we're taking care of kids in a lot of more ways than just educating them, and that increases.
Exactly.
Right, understood. But it's not decreasing, is it? It's only increasing. So the needs are only increasing. Pandemic exacerbated it. And then there were some one-time funds, and now those one-time funds are gone. And so there's a lot of different pieces coming together. So I think there's talk, Emily Kornheiser, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, has introduced a couple of bills that would increase new taxes to high earners and high asset holders, including one that would tax assets, meaning like, uncashed in assets. So over a certain, people who, I can't remember what the limit is, but people have assets over, say, $1 million, stocks, bonds, stuff like that. And there would be a tax on those assets, regardless of whether or not they've sold them. So, and then another tax that she's proposed that would be 3% on people, on income tax on people earning more than $500,000. So there is talk about trying to revamp that piece of the tax code. But I'm no expert on it. I've got a lot to learn. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One in a comment. I think it's H121.
Thank you. H1, not 212, 121.
Yeah.
You're right. And then it joined with S something that was kids code, but
Yep.
H121 is what it's called now. Thank you.
I'm
H121.
wondering, you said that you have there's a super majority.
Right.
Do you get the impression that if Scott vetoes, there will still be enough support for it to make its way through?
For which one?
H121.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, in the House, the Senate, is that anybody used to watch The West Wing when there's someone in The West Wing who's like, I can't remember which character, but someone's complaining about the Republicans. And then he says, the Republicans aren't the enemy. It's the Senate. So there's a lot, like I was there for the last week, right? And then the House was like so mad at the Senate because the Senate were making amendments and changing things. So I can't say anything about what the Senate thinks, but in the House, H121 passed 139-0.
Okay.
There were 3 Republicans who got up and left because they didn't want to go on record voting against it. And Phil Scott had asked the Republicans because Phil Scott had been signaling to them he wanted them to vote against it. So there's very strong support in the House. And my guess is there's very strong support in the Senate. Keisha Ram, the chair of the Senate Economic Committee, whatever, I can't remember what it's called. was the sponsor of the Kids Code Bill, which joined forces with this. And so, I would expect they could override the veto.
Okay, cool. And one more, sorry. You heard that there was some talk around like changing the way that schools are funded with property taxes. Did you hear anything about them allowing municipalities to choose whether or not to fund things through a property tax or something like a land value tax? Was that anything? I've heard that being discussed here and there, but I just don't know how common it is to talk
I have
about.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely talked about how I have, like, part of it is like, there's a lot of, like, I've heard lots of different talk about different ways to approach the tax policy, but I don't know what is realistic that people are actually working.
Thank you.
So, okay,
All
who's
right.
next? I'll do
Gail?
my best.
Coming over your way.
I'm Gail from Ward 4. So I've heard this notion about taxing people based on their assets.
Yeah.
And I'm going on what you were saying, something about retirees, which I am. People have worked their whole lives to have 401ks. Maybe they buy a house in Burlington, which now is $1 million house in Burlington.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but it's not like off the charts a lot. So my question is, how can you justify that? Because I feel like people just leave by the droves because Vermont is already one of the highest property tax states in the country.
Yeah.
And now you're going to say, oh, in addition to your high taxes, we're going to now disincentivize you because you saved money for your retirement, maybe to help with your old age or, you know, maybe not in a retirement account, but just for your own security. Now it's going to be based on that, not the property you own. So someone may have bought a house that they, well, I can afford this in my retirement. You know, this is with the taxes and they may go up a certain amount. And then all of a sudden, whoa, you know, we're going to have to pay based on our assets, which sounds a little bit like getting spanked.
Yeah, but I think it's part of it, because I don't remember what the limits are, but the asset limit before you're taxed on those assets is pretty high. So the idea, and then, so that's number one. And number two is, the studies that I've seen don't really, the idea of people leaving because of taxes doesn't really play out.
Well, I can just tell you, people on my road, they live 6 months in a day in Florida because they do not want to pay the taxes here in Vermont.
Yeah.
Just saying, and they could afford to stay here, but it just, I think there may be a lot of that, and maybe
understood.
the studies may not reach those people, but I think it already is. We retired here in Vermont 4 years ago, and you're already going, okay, our property taxes are this is what it costs to buy a house, and then now on top of that, you're going to have more taxes based on, and when we don't have kids in school, which I agree, I think we should support the schools because people have supported the schools when my kids were in school. So I mean, we do the same. So I'm not against that, but I mean, we already pay such high property taxes. I just think it would really be a disincentive for me, and I'd hate to move. I love living here, but it gets to a point where you're just paying so much.
I really do hear you. I think that we have a very serious affordability problem. Taxes are a piece of it, but there's a lot more that's, I think, bigger pieces of it. So anyway, I hear your tax policy is, I think, complicated. There's many, it's also our tax code is kind of dysfunctional and our federal system is dysfunctional. So I think
Well, I think also too, what happens is even people who have money, which sounds like, oh, they're not really going to care. They want to move from Vermont. But when people look at houses and they say, well, this is what my monthly costs are going to be. And they may have plenty of money to spend, but they're still going to look at the bottom line. So they look and say, well, this is what I can afford per month. And if the taxes are so high, the property cost is going to go down because they're going to say, well, I can afford to pay this for my mortgage or even cash or whatever they're paying. And I just think that's a bad way of going about it.
I mean, Vermont has Burlington and Vermont, especially Burlington, have a very serious affordability problem. I mean,
But how does that relate to people? I mean, I think if you start draining people out of the state who are owning properties that are paying taxes, high taxes, and are spending money in the community, that's not a solution either. I mean,
I hear you.
You know, that's like saying, well, we want to help. I do. I have two daughters. I have a daughter in her 20s who lives in Burlington. She's living in a tiny apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, the rent is sky high. So I understand that, but her landlords are paying such high taxes.
Yeah.
Like I try to explain to her, look, they have 4 units, they're paying this much. It cost them $1 million to buy this building, not a great building. And so the more you raise it, it's just it's gonna be, certainly it would be passed on to my daughter because that landlord is gonna go, well, now I have to pay this much per month.
I hear
So
you.
her rent's gonna go up. She doesn't make a lot of money. She's in her twenties. So it may sound like a great idea in theory, but I really oppose that. I'm saying. you know.
I
really
hear
would-
you.
I would consider another residence because of that. So
Mark, you
anyway,
had
thank
your
you.
One thing. One thing that people should realize in Vermont is a lot of our revenue goes into covering those lower income property owners. So I'll go on record that I'm a homeowner. I have a situation where finances are limited. I don't necessarily want to go into matters of that. Oh, yes, I will. So if you're dealing with members of the family with disability and you're basically going to be providing care and support, you only can make so much income. I'm glad I'm a homeowner. I'm a small business person. I actually hire people. I support the system as so far is that a lot of revenue, which doesn't happen in 47 other states, goes into the homestead exemption for those of us who are not making a lot of income as renters and homeowners. So we get rebates. And if we compare to some of the other states with services, which are completely minimal, I do think when it comes to assets, you have to look at possibly taxing the assets, but maybe here's the radical idea that I've been talking about since Bernie was mayor of really challenging unlimited ownership, speculation, and hedge funds. We just had an experience where I know 4 people, go into details, are no longer working with Teddy Bear, they got bought out through a hedge fund. There's a lot of speculating in our state. We also have the second highest rate of corporate run ownership, which means you own at least 20 properties. So we're not talking about people retiring or even Vermonters having a camp or 2. You have this phenomena of corporate LLCs who are like buying up large amounts of property and they're sort of deciding it. So those of us who are small homeowners, small business people are negatively impacted. So I feel like we're fighting for the same piece of the pie. So yeah, and so we do have a phenomena because I have people who families grew up in Stowe. Stowe used to be a working town, and they're hanging on by the skin of their teeth because they are considered income poor, property rich. So there seems to be that drive in this. So whatever reform has to happen has to look at what's called unfortunately called the go towns, Stowe, Burlington, which is kind of weird because in some ways it's both extreme wealth. It also has officially, I don't want to get into the weeds here. When I tell people and I show them that we officially have a 26.8% poverty rate, we have a 39% childhood poverty rate, it shocks a lot of people. And we're kind of managing it by a lot of buffers. We also have 9,600 units of accessible affordable housing through land trusts, Northgate, everything else. So we're trying to do this weird balancing act. And I think we have to take a radical direction, as Bernie talked about, and really look at controlling how big the big players in our housing, our rental, and everything else are really inflating things. Because I feel like it's like homeowners fighting against renters, renters critical of landlords. I think we're all trying to be in the same place, but the people on top, it feels like it's a puppet game here, and they're controlling a lot. And you'll probably see that in the state with with a lot of the lobbyists with this. And unfortunately, our governor really has, a lot of these really have the ear of the governor. So I do not see him really coming around with this. And the last thing I want to mention, because I do have the mic and I'll let it go, is our mayor's been trying everything possible to get our governor to come here and check out what's happening. And he seems to be completely avoiding coming to our city. So I'm asking our 10 members or 9.5 members of our state legislature to kind of knock on the governor's door saying, please come to our town and our city and let's talk one-on-one, because I do not like the bad comments coming out of his administration about Burlington. And I've said more than enough.
No, I agree with all those things. And I will say, that the Burlington legislators are, there was conversation right at the end of the legislature. We're going to form I don't know if it'll be officially called a caucus, but there's going to be much more coordination than there has been in the past between the Burlington legislators and the mayor's office and city councilors because, yeah, I mean, it is true. There is definitely this Burlington against everyone else. I mean, there's a rural, very strong, powerful rural caucus that, and I think Governor Scott is, very sympathetic to the rural caucus. Put it that way. So anyway, I don't need, is there anything else? Any questions? Anything?
We have
Yeah,
about 15 minutes left.
Sylvia, this could just be like an open conversation. I don't stand. I don't think
Hi.
Bob's covered.
Hi, I'm Todd DeLuca, Ward 4. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One on the education funding issue. Vermont has a tuitioning system. It's the oldest tuitioning system in the country. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of the local schools are less expensive than some of the Burlington schools. So that could be one way we could save money is by expanding the tuition system. And I think that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Would that be what the tuitioning systems?
It's the Vermont School Choice Program. It's so for example, people in South Hero, I think, don't have a high school.
Right.
And so they have access to go to schools of their choice.
All right, looks like we've got another question over here.
It's good?
Yes.
Cool. I have a personal anecdote about like the housing thing as you said, I forget your name. Mark, yeah. It's a personal anecdote when my mom and I were buying a house here in Burlington. We just realized that just compared from 2022 or so to now, the price of housing has almost doubled. And I am thinking about like what you said with like how culpable are the big corporations that play into this housing market, and a lot needs to change. That's all I'm gonna say.
So long as this is an active conversation, I do think that the corporation zoning things in a lot of the country is a big problem. I do want to highlight that in Vermont, we've created a really nice place to live. I make pretty good money, and it took me 3 years to afford a down payment on an okay house. A lot of the reason for the rising cost of housing is because while we have made a good place, we have not built anything in about 40 years. Neighborhood code has recently passed, and hopefully that'll change things. But if people are struggling with their paying the taxes, I can totally sympathize. The benefit of the neighborhood code that has recently passed is that it will enable people to have a duplex or a triplex on their property or something along those lines, which can help mitigate both the housing crisis and some like personal financial things. So I know AARP has some resources for helping people through that, and because I know it's complicated, and I would encourage everyone to reach out because I think it would help the whole city.
I just want to, in terms of the school tuition, my understanding as an educator is that school communities that do not have their own high school, those students have school choice. I'm wary of expanding that to communities that have their own community high school, because I think then we get into a system where communities don't support their community schools. We open it up to more money, taxpayer money going to private schools, which, I mean, as a public school supporter, I really am wary of that, because a lot of private schools they're not required to support kids with like neurodiversity. They're not required to support kids with any kind of diversity. So it's a little worrisome, I feel like, to open it up to that. Harley, Ward 7. Right. And it's already some of our taxpayer money because of I can't remember the number of the bill, because of something that was passed a couple years ago. It's already being funneled into some private schools.
I will step in. Well, thanks everybody for that active conversation and for Abby for sharing some updates and your experience. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Did you say sold?
So moved.
Oh, so moved. Okay, all in favor, yes.
He didn't have the microphone.
Great. Thank you all. Make sure you're connecting with anybody who you're on similar in terms of the conversations we had here tonight, the different committees and other topics. See you soon.